everybody, my name is Cynthia Cervantes, and I am number 7. So to introduce my topic, my topic is about academic stress between women and men in college. My research question is, how does academic stress differ between male and female college students? And some interest of mine on this topic was just growing up, like in high school, I mean. I remember hearing about how women were wanted for computer science degrees, and I would just hear about women emerging into male-dominated careers. So these are just some general interests of mine. Um, I also thought the topic was interesting to touch base on because, in my personal opinion, I think there are academic differences between male and female college students. Throughout my sociology courses, we hear about gender disparities and certain gaps. So I thought it would be interesting to learn a little bit more about the academic quality and academic stress differences. I also think it's going to be sociologically relevant because it will talk about gender, it touches base on academic quality, and it will touch base on um, it will touch also based on just academic itself and analysis of my literature. So, stress is prevalent among college students. And based on my literature also, uh, it was mentioned how academic stress is higher among women than males, but men do experience high levels of stress, of general stress, which included academic stress. My literature review also we note how coping strategies and family support help with academic stressors, which was more common among females than their male counterparts, which is why I feel like they stated it in that way, how men experience high levels of general stress because they lacking their coping and family support system. And Um, I did change a lot of my literature where I felt that it was more so psychological or like in terms of the health field, and I was able to find a literature review that touched base about American students versus international students academic stress differences, and it was just very interesting to know how American students do experience more academic stress than international students. And I thought it was, although this isn't that I recall touch a lot on gender, I thought it was important to just have in among my literature reviews since this is an interesting topic since I didn't really think about um, aiming this certain market about comparing American students versus international students. Some of the limitations about my literature review were that they were not only in the US and it's not accounting for societal and cultural differences, which I feel will be very important since people do grow up differently and are raised with different beliefs and roles. Um, I also through when I looked for new literature review, I also found one article that touched base on major diversity, where a lot of majors were accounted for. Some majors included coaching, biology, and education, for example. But according to this literature review, there was no significant difference between male and female respondents, yet female students scored higher stress levels in terms of mean scores. And this is my methods page. I am going to be doing a quantitative approach since I feel like this is the best method to really compare statistical analysis in terms of calculating academic stress. Um, I feel like I will be incorporating a lot of statistical models to and scales to really show statistical comparison and analysis. And if I were to use surveys, I would include a lot of scale rankings to make it more quantitative than qualitative. And my independent variable, initially I had just went with gender, but I concluded that based on how I want to approach my research, I am making major a part of my independent variable, where for major, I want to account for majors such as business, computer science, and engineering, which are more like male-dominated fields, and psychology and health professions, which tend to lean more to females, because I wanted like a diversity between both type of groups. My dependent variable is academic stress levels, and my control will be race, sexuality, and region in terms of like country. Um, I would also say this would include international or students that study abroad as well. Although not all of my studies really talked about international or students that study abroad. Um, I have it as my control for my research design. And since if I do talk about it, I will like take it into consideration, but it will not be like such a priority or something that would affect my independent or dependent variable. And for my study, I want participants in the US. My ideal goal of sample would be 50 females and 50 males. I, Although I did want a larger sample, I really wanted 200 females and 200 males. But um, since this is since it has no financial limits, it will be, in my opinion, really hard to come up with a team that could actually withstand 200 females and 200 males. Uh, so I feel like a good starting base would be like 50 females and 50 males. Although I feel like personally that is a little small of a sample. I feel like it is a good place to start to see how this design would work, how the research would go. And I will have them on their third year of undergrad, since I feel like it is the sweet spot where um they're not freshman students that are um they're not freshman students being compared to senior students, which I feel like their academic load might be different and their expectations will be different as well. I feel like third year students will be right at the sweet spot where it's like uh a fair game. I believe also in thinking about that too, for my control, I will probably acknowledge extracurricular activities. It'll probably be something that I should mention in my study as a limitation. Um, but it's not something I'm going to be accounting for or really calculating as as really a part of my independent variable. And I also saw in my literature review how a lot of my studies said that that the limitation was that they only research upon one school, but I kind of feel that for my study, I do not want that to be a limitation for my study, since I feel like it will not be the information will not be so muddy or all over the place. They will stay within the same school where course requirements or major requirements will not be different compared to a different school, which could actually affect um my dependent variable and and my dependent variable. And for my discussion, I am still keeping into account the transactional model of stress and coping, where individuals perceive and respond to stressors, emphasizing coping mechanisms, and the stress process model, structural and social conditions produce stress and how sources like support systems mediate its impact. I am also keeping into account stress levels, which are measurable degree or intensity of stress experienced by students. Stressors, which are external or internal factors that trigger or contribute to academic stress. Coping strategies, which are behavioral and cognitive efforts students use to manage academic stress. And academic stress, which are psychological distress and emotion strain and emotional strain students experience by academic demands. All of these factors were very common among my literature review, and they will be common among my research design, my research, since I feel like this really touches base on what I really want my study to focus on. And for my conclusions, I am still concluding that stress among college students is present, but females appear to have higher academic stress than males. Again, despite different countries, some of my literature reviews still was from different countries. Females still have higher academic stress, which I feel like was very important to remark. And there are some studies that mention how men have higher stress levels due to lack of coping and family support. I also think this is very important to consider because my study is not just focused on seeing if females um, differ from men, but my research is still based on how stress differs between male and females. So I thought it was pretty interesting that I actually found a literature that did show how in general men do have higher general stress, which also included academic stress. Again, I did mention again how my literature, um, I did mention how some limitations to my literature were that they were not all from the US, but some limitations on my research is that I'm not really focusing on race or ethnic background, country, like different country comparisons, like my literature, different cultures, uh, sexuality, since I feel like um, this is a lot to account for, especially when it comes to sexuality, since it would also probably go against like ethical regulations, since probably not many students will feel comfortable talking about their sexuality, and it will be really hard to really assess like race and ethnic cultural differences. So I just feel like I really want my research to be like specifically among how there are differences in students in general, which would include any student. And with that, I'm pretty much done with my presentation. And if there's any questions or comments, I would greatly appreciate it.